Welcome back.
To the next episode of Walking
Walking
It
it
Out
out with
with
the
the
Hamptons.
Hamptons.
Episode 4.
This is number 4, you guys, number 4. And so today, honey, I just really wanted us just to sit back and really talk about this topic of the pivot. And it's
Mm.
so funny because I've been seeing a lot of different posts from different people that I follow, and they're talking about the pivot, the pivot, the pivot. And sometimes in life, how we come to a crossroad and we have to decide, are we going to stay on this road or we're going to pivot? So when you hear the word pivot, what do you think of? Make sure we're on the same page.
Well, I think like when you got to pivot, it's almost like you got to make a quick movement. It's something that you're doing off the fly. It's not planned. It's not in your box that you have life
Mm-hmm.
pushed in, and you have to make an immediate change. Or I remember going through a car, and I've been dodging cars all weekend.
I know.
So it's
Woo.
been watching people just act crazy on the road. And an example of that pivot is that 5 seconds before an impact, and you make that decision that makes the decision of keeping yourself on the road or keeping yourself on the road or destroying something on the other side. So you have to make that quick, almost like a reflex
Mhm.
type move.
But I think one of the things that I wanted to make sure that we talk about is when we talk about pivot, we're not talking about quitting.
Mm-mm.
We're not talking about, I have this vision, I have this goal, and things aren't aligning the way I thought that they were going to by now. So I'm quitting. No, no, no. Sometimes it means that we have to pivot, change direction.
Change your direction. And, I always say this: tragedy never negates purpose.
Mhm.
So just because we have unexpected bumps in the road, what keeps you confident in the pivot is knowing that your purpose is secure, that you
Right.
know who you are, what you're called to do, and the bigger picture that you're trying to build. So, a pivot is a temporary thing, not necessarily a long thing. But you also have to make sure that you're not making short-term decisions that are going to affect you long-term
Long
in the
term,
past. So
right.
it's a reflective moment,
Mhm.
but it can have impact if you're
It
making the
can
wrong pivot
definitely
in the wrong
have
way.
impact. And I think that's one of the key things I want to make sure that we're making clear, that in the pivot, making sure that we're not making quick decisions that have this rippling effect that could deter us. So talk about a time where you had to make a pivot because you might have stayed somewhere too long.
Well, I've always been on this journey of building my business, Champ.i.am, and doing the work. And what's funny is every year I would say my 5 year plan.
My five
My
year plan
5 year
is
plan
dot dot
is,
dot.
and it was probably a decision I probably had to make 5 years ago. Every year, where I was currently at, I would continue to flourish and do
Mm-hmm.
well. So I'm like, all right, I'll put another year on it, but I would still have my hand on my vision, still be building, but I just kept on every year was a 5 year start. Till one day walked into the job and realized that they dissolved my position and my whole entire region and how they were doing, how they were planning business. And I always knew I never put my trust in employment.
Absolutely.
Never
Mm-hmm.
do that anyway. So when it happened, I always look at employment as I have a contract, you have a contract, and we're with each other till our contract is over. We
Mm-hmm.
feel like there's no news for each other. So I can quit you and you can quit me at any time. So in my when they did it, it didn't shock me because I didn't have all my peas in one pot.
So let's back it up for a second. True story. We are in the midst of a pivot right now,
Yes.
in the midst of a career pivot. And let's backtrack. In August, this next month, we would be in this new house for 4 years.
Yes.
And we moved here because of your position at your job. And a month ago, a
About a
month
month ago.
ago, you received the call that the reason why we moved down here
It's
is no
over.
longer.
It's no longer. But even with that, there's blessings in that because there's so
Yes.
many things that happened here that affected my purpose outside. So it moved me from Jersey to Delaware, where you might think that that's a small thing, but in reference to Champ I am, I'm right in the middle of the East Coast. So I'm 6 hours basically away from anybody that I normally need to go into a little bit more. Um, so that part wasn't the problem. The pivot, though, is deciding that I'm going to be a dual entrepreneur and start my own insurance agency while I'm still building
Champ
Champ
I
I
am.
Am. And that was a pivot
Mhm.
because now I could go back and try to go through the rat race of interviewing at 50 and interviewing, trying to make what I was making here. Or I could say, I'm going to take the next 10 years and build us at the same time.
So this pivot is causing you to, what would you say? Reevaluate,
No, expedite the timeline.
expedite
Expedite that
that
timeline.
5-year
That
plan.
5-year plan ended up being 1 month and 3. But even with that, I started to do. It was amazing because I just saw how God provided in those. It's been almost a month and a half. As soon as I did that, I started putting classes out and putting a demand on the gift that I had on there. And then, though nobody took the class the first time, I started putting other offers out, and I was able to get 3 clients in that month that was able to cover our expenses in that 1 month. So that was just a confirmation that, all right, I'm in the right direction of where I was going. Then I made the pivot on top of the pivot to say, well, I'm not going to get a regular job. I'm going to be my own business owner. And I always said I never worked for zero.
I never worked for
never worked for
anybody.
zero commission.
You are not can we slow down? You are not a 9 to 5, sit at a desk type of dude.
No, I got to walk around.
He's not just walk around.
Yeah, I got to look around.
It's just something that you even took the personality test.
Oh, that was funny. That was hilarious.
You should never work in an office.
I was like, I started my sales inside sales. So I'm thinking when I got to a season, when I got outside a little bit and got a chance to see what outside was like, I was trying to come back to inside because it was easier. And then I took the personality test, and they came back and said, "No, you need to be outside.
You need to be outside in the open air."
I wholeheartedly agree with that. So, and in that pivot of going in, there's still pressure in the pivot.
Oh, sure.
So even with me starting this agency, within what you have to look for are confirmations that you are going in the right direction. You're not going to hear this voice that comes out that's all the time. You might hear it sometimes that says, "Go." But sometimes you like, as you're going, things start to unfold.
Happen, right.
So as I started in my mind to think about the business and what it would look like, all of a sudden I get a brand. All of a sudden I start seeing logos. I start seeing things put into place. Then I start to put a voice behind where I was pivoting, and started to silently drip out what I was doing. And then all of a sudden resources
began
were there
to show up.
And that's where I always talk about when I'm doing the speaking side, leadership training side, is that provision doesn't follow purpose. Provision is before the purpose, but you have to be walking in purpose to come into the intersection of that provision.
Because why do you need the resources if you're not walking in and towards your purpose?
Right.
The resources will come.
And a lot of times we are pivoting in wrong places and wondering why we're in barren situations, and you might have pivoted in the wrong direction, which requires you just to make another pivot. Just do another pivot back and do it. It's okay to backtrack to go forward. But when you find yourself in a situation where you're making these decisions and you don't see anything, any help, any provision, that's when you go back and say, did I make the right decision at the right season?
And going back and evaluating where that left turn went, and I should have gone right.
Yes. And it's all different, because even with that, it's a different feeling because you're walking in the unknown. But when I started what keeps me going forward in the midst of our pivot is I start looking back at the different things that I had accomplished because of a pivot. And I was walking in unknowns when I pivoted the last time, but as I continued to do that progress, I just repeat the same thing over again. So you go back and say, it worked before, I can work it again. And you just got to be, I think the main attribute that you need when you are pivoting is the art of being flexible, bending without breaking.
Right.
And being able to be flexible. Sometimes we're too rigid in how we see our life, what our life should be. If we were put a little more bend in that.
Well, I think because there's a security in knowing I'm going to go this road. I know this road. I'm comfortable on this road. I can ride this road with my eyes closed. But when that pivot comes, it's like this unknown, and we love security and stability.
And I think what happens is you have to have adopted an explorer mindset. So
okay.
Talk about that. When I'm with an explorer mindset, when you think of an explorer, he or she is always coming across new things. So the whole part of being an explorer is not to look for the things that are comfortable, but looking for the things that were unknown and those unknown treasures that could be across. So when you have that mindset, the fear of the unknown is out weighed by the
Curiosity of it all.
curiosity and the expectation of greater ahead,
Mhm.
and that greater is for you.
And I love the thought of not me staying on the safe path, but what's over to the left? What adventures are over there? I'm like that whimsical
Right.
type of personality where the straight line, yes, it's safe, but I'm curious too. If I go left, what's out there? What adventures, what untapped resources? My imagination always thinks like, oh, but what if? I'm always up here. I'm a kite.
Yeah.
Talked about that before. That's my kite personality. But how do you, when it's time to pivot, what are some signs that I've been going in this direction, but I'm not satisfied or I'm not fulfilled? Like, what are those signs that tell you that maybe it's time for a pivot?
I think anxiety and depression, when you start looking at your emotional states and you're staying in things too long and your body is telling you, hey, a change has got to happen.
Mhm.
We'll stay in a relationship too long. And then all of a sudden, when you are, when we talk about abusing situations, when we talk about life abuse, we say, well, when the purpose of a thing is not known,
Abuse.
is inevitable. And that's not
Dr. Miles
always Dr.
Monroe.
Miles Monroe. It is not always someone hitting you in your face in a relationship that makes it that's a perversion too. But sometimes when you are in a situation too long, that's like you're cooking your favorite meal and you leave it on the stove too long. It don't taste the same.
It's dry.
It's dry. But what you do is because you don't want to have that fear of the unknown, you'd rather you'd rather what do you call it? You'd rather adjust and what's the word I'm saying? You rather stay in
Settle.
with
Dr. Kim,
yes, you'd
that
rather
we don't settle.
that you're settling for an unsatisfactory
Yeah.
life because I'd rather deal with the life that I know
Mhm.
than deal with the unknown. And when you can get that, you switch that. It allows you. Most people are dealing with anxiety and purpose. Anxiety and depression. Now, I'm not talking about the chemical parts where you need medication, but those ones where you're just feeling that heaviness
Anxious,
and that
right.
anxiousness is because when you don't know your purpose,
Mhm.
it's a almost an alarm system in your body that's
Mhm.
saying you're not functioning the way that you're
You're
supposed to.
supposed to be
You're not
functioning.
functioning at
Mhm.
maximum capacity. You're not functioning the way that you are designed, and your body will tell you that. The other thing is,
There's this
yeah,
book called The Body Keeps
oh
Score,
yes,
and your body
yeah.
absolutely begins to show you the dissatisfaction, the something's not right. And like you said, it's not necessarily something that requires medication, but there's this angst
Mhm.
that you begin to have
When
when
you're not walking in
you're
your
not
purpose,
walking in purpose.
when you're not walking into purpose, that's trauma to your body.
Mm,
That's
mm,
trauma to
mhm.
your body, that's trauma to your spirit, that's trauma to your emotional state.
That's
So
good.
when you're not walking in purpose, you're walking in abuse, your abnormal use of who you're supposed to be. And you're like, well, how do I know that? Well, you're looking at all the signs. You're looking at the mental signs, the emotional
You're
signs. You're
exhausted.
fighting with your family.
Hmm.
You're fighting with your word. You're having less patience when you're dealing with those things. Those are triggers that you have to be able to look at yourself and say, hey, something's wrong. I'm
Something's
not
off.
right. You know, I've
Something's
been throwing
off.
out therapists for a while. Get your therapist to be
Mhm.
able to get you the language where you're at. But when you're doing that and you are ignoring purpose, you're ignoring your heart's cry, what ends up happening is you are causing trauma to yourself.
You're causing trauma to yourself. But how do you, if is this just a temporary frustration, or is this really truly a signal that it's time for me to pivot?
Mhm.
Especially when you've been in a situation and it's not the environment is fine, but it's just this internal
It's an
dissatisfaction.
internal dissatisfaction that if you don't be careful, you can mute it. And what happens is a lot of people know you've been feeling the signs of this for a long time. You've been feeling the pressure and the need to change. You have the fear and the anxiety, but you've muted it. And you've muted the voice of your alarm system in your body that's telling you, hey, go a different
Mhm.
direction. And that's a possibility that you can continue down that road. And even though you've muted it, you could still be on your way to a breakdown where it's going to take you longer to
Mhm.
get back and to pivot and to change. The longer you go down this road, the harder it is to make that pivot
Mm.
because you're conditioning yourself to stay in something that you're not meant to stay in.
And that reminds me of when I co-founded a charter school back in 2011. We opened in 2011, and I remember specifically when we first opened that I heard, I'm not going to say it was the voice of the Lord, but I just knew within my heart that I would be at this charter school to get us through the first rechartering. So you go 4 years and then you have to reapply to keep your charter. And I went through that process. So it was supposed to be me being there only 6 years to get us through the next charter season. And I stayed. I stayed longer than I knew at the beginning of this journey that I was supposed to say. And just a lot of things just began to happen. And by year 8, 2 years overdue, I had to pivot when we realized we could not support the special needs children that we had. So we surrendered our charter. And I remember during that time, as we're talking to the state and we're going through the process of surrendering the charter, that I heard clearly, you stayed too long. You
Mhm.
didn't pivot when you were supposed to. So the heaviness for me in that whole experience was that I had gotten comfortable when I knew year 6 I was supposed to change.
And sometimes a pivot looks like a failure. And
It
that's
felt
and
that
that's
way.
the
Oh,
reason
absolutely
that's the
felt that
reason
way.
why we don't, because it doesn't look like it's going into the
Mhm,
maximum area of where I need to be.
mhm.
It's taking me a step back. Part of it is, hey, when you're used to making triple digits and then you have to make a decision to not do triple
I almost
digits.
started to go work for Amazon
I know,
after.
listen, what I
I
am
was
not doing, what
I
I
was so
yeah,
lost. I
yeah.
was like, just gonna go work for
I'm not,
Amazon.
well, like I said, even in this situation, I'm trying to say what I'm not going to do, but I said I'm not going back to like having to do a tree job
No,
situation, because
no,
I was
yeah,
like, oh, that's where I had my awakening 10 years ago
yeah.
about the thing. So I don't think going backward you can't look at it as a failure. And even in the pivot, it takes you into another
It
experience.
did.
It takes
It
you
did.
into another experience that can lead you to another opportunity. I'm not saying my insurance company is going to fail. No, I'm not going to say that. But if it did not do what it was expected to do, it still positioned
Mhm,
me. The opportunity still positioned me with relationships that I would not have had, that
mhm.
opened doors to other opportunities that I would not have seen if I
Absolutely.
never went down. Now, you also have to think about it. What if what you do works?
Oh, absolutely.
So you have to. A lot of times
We look
we
at the
build the
what if it
yeah
goes
we
wrong.
build the case for failure.
Right. We
We
got to
build the
build the
case for
case for
failure. You got to
success.
start also
Yes.
building the case for what if this thing happens, because a lot of people have a fear of success as well. The reason why they don't start things, because if it prospers, they got to deal with the trauma and the troubles that come with being prosperous, and
Which there are.
which are bigger and better issues, because if it's bigger and better problems, that means it's a bigger and better yield. But you have to change how you see about that pivot.
But as you're talking, I'm laughing. I'm thinking about, because that was my mindset. Like, oh, I failed my parents. I failed my kids. My first kindergarten class actually graduated high school this year.
Wow.
And so I just had the opportunity just to reflect. And God really just showed me like that it wasn't failure. Like, look at the lives you impacted. Look at the teachers whom I still love dearly, the administrators, all the wonderful people that I met over the experience. But in that pivot period, when a good friend of mine hired me to work at her company, I was there for 3 months. 3 months, and I was settled. Like, okay, if this is where I'm going to be, this is where I'm going to be. Then I got a life changing call one day from our pastor and our bishop that said, "Come work for the church full time." And I was like, "No, it's what I do. I don't want to
Right.
get paid. This is what I do." And just going through that journey of saying yes to the newness of that, but the heightened of creativity, the writing, the uh, B3 Media, and the people that I've met. It's
So
like saying yes to that.
B3 Media would not have been where you are today if you didn't take that pivot of taking the position and being able to take that position, which ground, and what the position will sometimes do is put you into an environment that says, I want
I
more
want
than
more.
more. It wasn't necessarily saying I hate where I'm at. It's that,
Oh
all right,
no.
this is still not a full cup,
Mm-mm.
and it required you to be able to take something out that was in you and then bring it out now to
Totally.
do it. Still
It
not,
puts a
yes,
demand on me in a way that I have not experienced creatively. Working for Victory, working at my church full time, puts a demand on me, and it also again allowed my imagination to flourish into other areas. Well, if I can do that here, then what about here? And just really seeking, my writing has increased, my creativity has increased, all the things. So
And when I learned even about this job change of being able to go from high income, I believe that was an opportunity for me to be introduced to high income so that when I'm doing my businesses, I'm not overtaken by high income. To be like, I got to live beyond our means, right? So those are things that also are uncovered. So again, having that explorer mindset of being able to look life forward rather than you're not going to know
yes.
everything. You're not going to, everything's not going to be put up in a tidy little bow for you.
Mm-mm.
Sometimes you got to put some things together and find out you have some missing pieces.
Yes.
But that's where, again, being flexible is important. And I hope that you hear that word
Ability.
is whenever you, if you ever Google palm trees during a hurricane, you'll see these huge, tall palm trees that we usually see like in Florida during the hurricane season. You'll see that 100 feet up, and they'll go. And it looks like the wind is bringing it, and it'll look like the wind is going
Hey,
all
hey,
the way
you
down.
hit my monstera.
That's all right, boo boo. But it looks like it's going all the way down, and then what happens when the wind stops? It goes right back
It
up
goes
again.
right back into
You
position.
need to have that type of flexibility in your life, in your marriage, with your children, and then again, there are there are benefits of being flexible. Again, knowing that you can bend and not break, and make sure that some of the things that make pivots a little bit harder is if your family's not right. If you don't have that frequency where you and your husband or you or your wife are together and y'all can lock in, it makes pivoting a lot harder.
Right.
We're able to pivot now because we're in a better place. But had we been 10 years ago, it would have been a little more difficult to do that because you got less trust is there and trust is built.
But we have built a record now of trust.
Yes.
That's why if this would have happened 10 years ago, it would have been much more. Because what did I say when you told me? It was like, we've been here before.
Been here before, didn't I? And we've navigated before. A lot of times, me, I don't have problems really making decisions. Like I said, I'll own up a mistake real quick. But knowing that, to me, with my explorer to life mindset, I'm always like, you never know what opportunities me being or me pursuing or me doing this is going to go into. I don't know who I'm going to meet that's going to turn me to take me to the next level in my business. But you need to have a business in order to meet that mentor that's going to be along the line. So I think the hardest struggle for people who have to pivot are the people that are perfectionists. They live in a perfectionist world where everything has to be pre-planned, in alignment, the right way. Me, I function off of chaos.
Oh, you love chaos.
But I love chaos, but it makes me, well, it's not that I love chaos.
Oh, you love chaos.
I'm not anti-order. I'm not anti-order. I'm ordering some things and chaotic in other things, but I think I'm built that way.
You function better because I see when certain things are in order and you look like there's a tension there.
I can find things in my chaos that I can't find in the order sometimes. But when things are chaotic, I looked at that from the Army. I was even looking at that I just was on the road and this truck was with a U-Haul trailer was weaving in and out of traffic as if it was one of those little sports cars. And I'm watching him, but he jumped in front of me like this last minute. If I couldn't function from chaos and I'm locked in on the road in front of me, I would have delayed my thinking to be able to say, what if I do this? What if I go this way? I'm gonna run into this person. If I go this way, no, I saw in the whole entire 3 seconds, I saw the truck that he was about to run into. If he ran into that truck, I would have to pull over this way so that he would have to go that way. I had a wide angle of the field, and that's just being flexible and being able to make those changes.
All that in your purview.
And maybe that was a military thing that we learned, just because even though we never really went into combat, they really drilled into us being able to respond. They actually had a live fire course that simulated combat. And in my mind, I was like, this ain't real. But it was like bombs were going off all over the place, and you'd have to be able to move through that
and
respond and be able to go, and not to stand. The reflex is to stand up, but the greater reflex was knowing that it was supposed to be live fire. So I know that if I stand up, it probably wouldn't have hit me, but the bullets were live. So I stayed down. But I watched other people, other soldiers that were going through, who froze in the midst of the battlefield. And this was a simulated battlefield. It wasn't the real thing, but the
Right.
bombs had got them. And while we're crawling under all the different things having to move forward, they're frozen in their body. And why they froze? Because they allowed their thoughts to take the lead in the conversation rather than their brain to control their thoughts. They allowed the thoughts to stop them from moving forward.
Paralyzed.
And it
They got
paralyzes them.
paralyzed.
And that's where your thoughts can be a perversion and an abuse in itself, because your thoughts are not meant to lead you. Your decision making is the wisdom that brings your thoughts into alignment and where you're going forward.
And that's so good.
I
So
can't say that
before we
twice.
go, I know you couldn't. I wasn't going to make you. I was going to make you. So before we go, I want to play like a short rapid fire with
Oh, I
you.
like the
Okay.
games. I like the psychology games. Like ink
So
spot.
before we go, I want you to look in the camera and tell the audience life is too short to rapid fire.
Oh, okay.
Life is too short to
Waste.
okay. Wish people knew.
Their future is not defined.
The best decision I almost didn't make.
Starting Champ.i.am when I did.
My next pivot might be.
My best pivot.
I like that. Thank
Yes.
you for joining us for this episode. And remember, pivoting is not about quitting. Pivoting is about redirecting to make sure that you are fulfilling the promise and the plan and the purpose for your life.
And if you like what you heard, please like, share, subscribe. You'll see us on Spotify, on YouTube, and on Facebook. And most of all, if it reached you, it can reach someone else. So share this word with someone else. And you've tuned into another episode of Walking It Out with the Hamptons.
See you later.